Your mom's favorite YouTuber KKS here, and welcome to part 2 of my NBA standings predictions. Yesterday you got the Eastern Conference standings, today you will be getting the Western Conference standings. But before we start, I want to ask all of you guys to please subscribe. It takes 10 seconds, just scroll down, click the red subscribe button. Um, and yeah, takes 10 seconds, it's free for you, but it helps me out a ton. I would very much appreciate it. So just do that, and I'm gonna go with my top 15 teams for the Western Conference standings. I'm gonna list out their tiers first, and then get to it with the explanations. So here it is, 1 through 15. Starting from the bottom tier is the 15th seed, the Oklahoma City Thunder. The only reason I have them as my bottom team is because they're the only team in the West that expects themselves to not make the playoffs. I think every other team, their expectation is to work for the 8 playoff spots or 2 play-in spots. Um, so I think there are going to be 4 disappointed teams, but the Thunder, they know they're not going to make the playoffs. They had magic last year to get them to the 6th seed with Chris Paul and Steven Adams, but both those guys are gone. It's just Shea now. He's got to take a big step forward this year. They added George Hill and Al Horford, but realistically, that was only for other teams to get rid of their cap. Um, yeah, I think the Thunder at this point, they're just developing for the future. They've got their 17 future first round picks, and they'll be fine being the worst team this year. 14, the Spurs. The next tier, by the way, 11 through 14, teams who I think don't make the play-in games. I just think the other 10 teams are better than these 4 teams. Spurs, Grizzlies, Timberwolves, and Kings. I put the Spurs at 14. However, these 4 could honestly be ranked in any order, in my opinion, but I put the Spurs at 14 simply because I don't see much talent on this team. They have DeMar DeRozan. It's a star player, not a superstar player. LaMarcus Aldridge is getting older, and they've got a bunch of young guys. Murray, Walker, Keldon Johnson, Sell. I know I'm forgetting someone. Derek White. I'm still forgetting somebody. I think they still have Jakob Pertl. But anyways, I just don't see it this year, and it pains me to say this, but the Spurs with Popovich. Popovich doesn't have the magic to take them from this roster to a playoff team in the West. Coach can only do so much, but I think the Spurs are 14th, the Grizzlies 13th. Injuries to Jaren Jackson. Now that Ja is injured as well, I would put them at 14. But these were my predictions prior to the start of the season, so I'm gonna stick to it. Um, I just don't think this team's good enough with these injuries. Dylan Brooks is great. Kyle Anderson's a good role player. Valanciunas is a is a good player, not a great player, a good player. He's added that 3, so he's a great center. He's a good center. Um, but I just don't see this team having enough. Their 2 best players out. I have to put them at 13. Timberwolves at 12. They're gonna improve from last year, definitely. Last year they revamped the whole roster at the trade deadline. They're led by D'Lo and Cat. They are great friends. Both of them are great players. I think they're both all stars this year. But I don't think Anthony Edwards is a good player. I think he's a bust. Um, Malik Beasley's good, but he's a role player as well. And I just don't see the Timberwolves being a playoff team this year. Maybe next year, but they're still a few pieces away. The Kings at 11. We've been waiting a couple years. We thought the Kings would be in the playoffs by now, but it's just getting worse and worse for them. They lost Bogdan Bogdanovic, which looks bad, but I think if managed correctly, could be a positive with the opportunity to give Buddy Hield more of a role within the offense, which he should have. I'm pretty sure we all agree, but the coaching staff just is so reluctant to give him a role for some reason. I have no idea why, but it is what it is. I don't know why you pay him that much and then not play him. Anyways, that's my four not terrible teams. They're going to be the disappointed teams that think they should make the playoffs, but they won't. But moving on, the next tier I have is 10 through 8. The teams that are playoff contenders that I think will get a shot to compete for those last two spots, or last spot. I mean, put the Warriors at 10. I just don't see it. They have Curry, they have Draymond, they have great role players: Kelly Oubre, Andrew Wiggins, Wiseman. But that's all they are, role players. Wiseman's going to be a great player in the future, but if you don't play him enough, like the Warriors have been doing, then he's not going to develop as much as you want him to. They're still playing small. They're reluctant to play a 7 footer at center simply because they like playing small. I mean, I have nothing against playing small ball, but if you have such a talented player in James Wiseman, you need to be giving him the minutes to succeed. Um, Oubre has been shooting terrible. Wiggins is Wiggins. Curry is Curry. He's a top five player in the league, probably the best point guard in the league, but you need more than one player in the Western Conference. And Draymond is not going to take a non-playoff team. He's more of a guy who's going to take a playoff caliber team to a championship contender rather than a non-playoff team to a playoff team. It's just I think I mentioned that in the last video. Who was it? Who was I talking? I was talking about I don't even remember, but if you haven't already watched that, and you'll see. But yeah, I just don't think the Warriors are good enough. Considering they're the 15th seed, I don't think Curry takes them from 15 all the way to 8. I think he takes them from 15 to 10. With Clay, this team is a top 4 team in the West. Oh, no question about it. But Clay's not there. Um, Clay's a fantastic player. Um, Without him, the Warriors are just not the same. At 9, I have the Rockets. That's assuming Harden doesn't get traded, which is looking more likely than not at this point. Um, I mean, it's hard to deal a player like Harden when the, the Rockets aren't willing to give him up easily, and he's such a unique player that won't fit on every team. He fits on very few teams, and with the combination of his contract, his uniqueness, and the Rockets, I just don't see him getting traded this year. Especially since Harden isn't demanding a trade, he's preferring a trade. I mean, just those four factors lead me to believe he's staying for this year. Um, at 8, I have the New Orleans Pelicans. They've got a nasty front court with Zion and Steven Adams. I think that's going to be a nightmare to try to handle for opposing offenses and defenses. Um, they've got an interesting backcourt with Lonzo and Bledsoe. Drew Holiday's not there, but Bledsoe is a solid replacement for him. He's not going to replace him with everything, especially in the offensive end. But I think he defensively, Eric Bledsoe's a great player, very similar to Drew Holiday. Um, yeah, I just don't think he replicates the offensive success. And it's up to Lonzo. If he can improve, then the Pelicans will be a playoff team. If not, then they'll struggle to make the playoffs. They still could if Ingram and Zion pick up the slack from Zoe, but it's going to be tough without Lonzo improving. I think he will, though. I don't think he's ever going to reach that number 2 overall pick status, but I think he'll improve to be a great starter in this league. I don't think he'll be an all-star. Um, it's just the way it is with how good the point guards are in the West, but I think the Pelicans do enough to make the playoffs this year. Um, Brandon Ingram's going to continue to improve. Zion hopefully is healthy this year. They've got good role players as well in JJ Redick and what's his name? Nikhil Alexander Walker, Jackson Hayes, and more. And I think it's a good enough roster to make the playoffs. Stan Van Gundy is a pretty good coach, and I think they get it done. I think he's exactly what this Pelicans team needed. Next tier, it's 7 through 3. Um, it's kind of playoff teams, but are they championship contenders really? It's like one piece away, one or two pieces away from being a championship contender. So the Mavericks at 7. They've got Luka and Porzingis, but I don't think that's enough. Luka is an MVP caliber player. I had him second in my MVP predictions. With Porzingis out for first 10, 20, 30 games maybe even of the season, I just don't think they'll be better than what they were last year at 7. Um, I think even if Porzingis was healthy, I don't think he's good enough to be the number 2 option on a championship team. I think they need somebody else, and I think Porzingis has to be the third guy. Um, I don't know what it's gonna be. I think the Mavericks are aware that they need another guy, a star player. Um, but for this year, I think they're a playoff team. I think their team is good enough to stay in the playoffs without Porzingis until he gets back. But I don't think they improve last year. Six, the Jazz. This one it could. The Jazz and Suns are hard. Um, because the Jazz are like it's an interesting scenario because Donovan Mitchell is a playoff player more than a regular season player. He's not a superstar in the playoffs like he is in. I mean, he's not a superstar in the regular season like he is in the playoffs. In the playoffs, this guy is a top 15 player in the league. In the regular season, though, he's not as great. His shooting percentages are down considerably. He's incredibly clutch in the playoffs. One of my favorite players simply because of his playoff performances. Um, but the rest of the team is the opposite. The rest of the team is a great, like, defensive cornerstone team where they're gonna be playing great in the regular season, but come playoff time, can they take the next step like the other teams offensively? Gobert needs to improve on the offensive end. Royce O'Neal is a great wing defender. Mike Conley's just getting older, but they're gonna need some great contributions from Jordan Clarkson off the bench in the playoffs. And Boyan needs to be playing better than what he's been doing because last year a big reason why they were good was because of Boyan scoring 20 a game. I think with Boyan they would have definitely beat the Nuggets in the playoffs, but for now, 6 seed. There needs to be changes. It's just they're not a playoff. They're the Pacers of the West. Small market. They're not going to be championship contenders unless they have a top 15 player. And Donovan Mitchell isn't that in the regular season, unfortunately. Hopefully, he can bring some of his playoff magic into the regular season. But I don't mind if he's just a playoff guy. Perform in the playoffs and not as much in the regular season. That's fine with me. But for now, 6 seed Utah Jazz. Fifth, the Phoenix Suns. Hard one to gauge. They could be anywhere from between 1 and 8. I mean, not one, but like 3 and 8, more realistically. Um, I think Devin Booker's a great player. I don't think he's better than Donovan Mitchell in the playoffs. Well, I don't think regular season Devin Booker is better than playoff Donovan Mitchell, but I think he could possibly be better than regular season Donovan Mitchell, which gives me the edge here. Um, DeAndre Ayton needs to be playing better. If he does, then they could be even the 4 or 3 seed. Um, but if he doesn't, then they're going to be falling. It's really going to depend on him. Chris Paul, though, hopefully he plays like he did when he was on the Thunder. Love Chris Paul. Hopefully he can continue to play well, even at this high of an age. But I think the Suns are a playoff team. It took me a while to believe in them um, initially, but I think they really are a playoff team now, and they could go anywhere. I put them at 5. I think that's a nice, safe spot to put them in, but they could be anywhere. Again, as I mentioned. 4, the Trailblazers. They're much like the Suns. They could be anywhere here. I even think they have more potential. They could be the second seed above the Clippers. If Damian Lillard has an MVP type season like I predicted. Um, but again, it feels like they're one piece away from being a championship team. Damian Lillard is a consensus top 10 player. Few people think he's top five, which I could see the argument for. Um, but anyways, they've also got CJ McCollum, who's been playing better than Lillard so far this year. And they've made plenty of additions. Last year, they had Nurkic and Rodney Hood injured. This year, they got both of them back. Unfortunately, they still have Zach Collins hurt. But they've added Robert Covington. They've added Derrick Jones Jr. Gary Trent has emerged as a great player. They've still got Carmelo. He's coming off the bench now. Anthony Simons has one more year of experience. Nasir Little has one more year of experience, although not sure how much of an impact he can have. But if best case scenario, the Trailblazers could be the second seed. Worst case scenario, they deal with a lot of injuries. They'll be the eighth seed. But I don't know. This team is fun to watch. I recommend watching Trailblazers games this year, especially against great teams. It usually comes down to the wire. And games coming down to the wire with Damian Lillard. Even CJ McCollum has shown this year he can be clutch. He's got 2 game winners this year. So Trailblazers are going to be fun. One of the best backcourts in the league. Yeah, they're championship contenders with one more piece. Third, the Nuggets. I think they got worse from last year. They lost great player Jeremy Grant. He's balling out in Detroit now. Right now, they've also lost Mason Plumlee to the Pistons. He's a great role player. But I think they got slightly worse um, because I think Jamal Murray um, carries his momentum from the playoffs till this season. It started off slow and inconsistent, but hopefully he's able to make it an all-around, um, make himself an all-around player and improve. But another important piece is Michael Porter Jr. Um, as I said in my most improved player video, I think he wins the award. He used to be one of the best players coming out of high school, and I think he can be a great offensive talent in this league. I think he can average 20 a game this year if given the opportunity. Right now, he's on the COVID. I don't even know what's going on, but he's not playing currently because of Corona. But when he comes back, I think he's going to be great. Hopefully, it didn't affect him, his confidence in any way. But I think the Nuggets are a 3 seed, same as last year. I think they got slightly worse, but I think Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. will replace the talent lost, at least offensively. At two, the Clippers again. I thought they got worse. Um, say what you guys will. A lot of people think the Clippers got better. I just don't see it. I don't think Harrell replacing Harrell with Serge Ibaka was an improvement. I think defensively it was definitely an improvement, but that's a lot of offensive talent lost. They need to replace that talent with somebody. Paul George, hopefully. I know everybody likes making fun of him, but I remember the old Paul George on the Pacers. I really enjoy watching him, so I hope he plays better. Kawhi is a Kawhi. He's gonna be a beast. They've got Pat Bev and Reggie Jackson at point guard. I think that's good enough. They've got Lou Williams coming off the bench, Six Man of the Year candidate once again. Um, they've got Zubats, and I think this team is going to be the second seed again. I still think they're a step down from the Lakers. I thought the same last year, but I think they can definitely make the Western Conference Finals this year and finally compete with the Lakers in the matchup everybody wants to see. It feels like. So yeah, the Clippers at two, and at one I have the Lakers. I feel like of these top teams in the West, the Lakers are the only ones that got exponentially better. They lost Avery Bradley, but they didn't even have him in the bubble. Um, they lost Danny Green, but he wasn't playing well in the bubble. Um, lost somebody else. They lost Dwight Howard and JaVale McGee. I mean, both of them had slight impacts on the game, but it wasn't anything that they can't replace. those guys they replaced with, I think, better talent. Marcus Saul, he's not the player he once was, but he's going to be a great role player. I think he's a perfect fit on this Laker team. Um, they added Dennis Schroeder, which I think was one of the best trades of the offseason. Um, Schroeder's going to be a great player as well. He's going to start at point guard for them. I think that's an improvement over last year. And they also added, who was it? Montrezl Harrell. Um, again, as I mentioned, Montrezl Harrell is a great player, great offensive player. Hopefully, he can improve defensively. But even if he doesn't, the Lakers have more than enough talent to replace his game on the or to compensate for his lack of defense. Um, and LeBron, Anthony Davis, Marcus Gasol are going to be able to do that. I still think LeBron and Anthony Davis are the best duo in the league. Um, so I think the Lakers get the 1 seed, and I think there's a very strong chance they go back to back. As long as they stay healthy, I think that's the case, and I think the Lakers uh, replicate last year's success. Um, yeah, that's about it. Thank you all for watching. Again, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. And I hope to see you all next time.